right. YouTube is ready. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another inspiring episode of Nmp Talk Show. And And today we have a special program dedicated to a topic that touches many lives: the journey it takes of mental health recovery and resilience. And joining us today is an extraordinary individual who has not only navigated her own path through mood and personality disorder, but also dedicates her time to helping others find their way. Please join me in welcoming Carrie Jean Hickman. Carrie, how are you?
Hi, Nia. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm also good. So, Carrie is a passionate advocate for mental health wellness and a beacon of hope for those struggling with their mental health. She is also willing to share her personal experience, challenges she's facing, and the triumphs she achieved along the way. Additionally, she will tell us about her impactful workshops that she's running and um, the resources that she's using to strengthen and also encourage people around that are suffering. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by Hickman's she's telling her story of resilience and her remarkable efforts in supporting mental health wellness. Kerry, welcome once more, and we are happy that you have come to our show and going to experience a lot more things from you. So tell us, Kerry, how how did you come about um, that this has happened to you, like your journey of mental health wellness? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. And thank you so much for having me. There is so much stigma and lack of awareness around mental health and mental wellness. So it is a huge passion in my life to share my story and to make mental wellness accessible through multiple different channels. And for me, it starts. I suppose there's two starting points in a way. The first is just the starting of life and growing up with very young parents who were still learning things themselves, growing up in an economy and a world, a country where there was a lot of stuff going on. Um, and my parents, things were rough. We didn't have a lot of money. They came straight out of school, so there was a lot of work going on. And I definitely felt a big part of growing up. I was very loved, but I felt neglected almost in a way. And it was only later in life when I was an adult that I realized, oh, my parents did love me. They were out there working day and night so that we could put a roof over our heads, that we could have food in our bellies, And so, but as a kid, all I saw was that I never got to see or spend time with my parents. And I have the most amazing family and my grandparents and great grandparents. I'm very blessed. But I suppose that's the one start to the story, is the kind of childhood that I grew up in. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. A lot of our childhood defines much of who we are and how we cope with things. The second start, I would say, is when I very much started suffering with depression in a way. And this was by the time I was a teenager. And I really struggled. I struggled with social anxiety, fitting in with other people. But what I learned was that I could pretend. And so a lot of people, they deal with their anxiety and their fear by hiding and being in the background. I dealt with mine by stepping up and leading. If I led,
Hmm.
people didn't ask too many questions. And so
Yeah.
that's how I developed. I developed this mask that was a chameleon, and it could change when I was at home, at school, within sports, with my family, further family. And that's really how I went through high school into college and varsity and my young adulthood. By the time I was 25, I had already started using drugs, and I'd been drinking heavily for many years, smoking, all of those kinds of things. And eventually it all just came to an end. And this is where the real start of my journey begins. Not necessarily the healing, but the awareness. I realized that life was awful. I didn't want to live this life. A lot of stuff was going on. There was a lot of depression. I was engaged. I was coping, struggling to even cope with that. It was just all overwhelming. And I kind of just said to myself, well, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And so I actually planned to kill myself. And it wasn't my first suicide attempt, but it was definitely my most planned out. And by the grace of God, I was very involved in a church. I was a youth leader, pastor. I worked with a lot of teenagers, and I had a couple that was a lot older than me that was very much a part of my life, mentoring me, being there for me, supporting me, and just a lot of things. And this couple said to me, Carrie, you need help. And I was literally on the verge of a breakdown. And I said, right, you've got until Friday. If we don't find something or do something, then I'm saying goodbye. And they managed to get me in, even though I literally had like no money, no medical aid or anything like that. I was doing an internship at a church, and they got me into a private psychiatric clinic. And that was in 2006. And at this clinic, they said, look, we think you're an addict, you've got this. And they diagnosed me with depression. And I think that happens for a lot of people. They're diagnosed with depression first. And very often it's a misdiagnosis because we go into clinic or we seek help when we are depressed. But that is not necessarily the only problem. It is just the side of the problem where we are so desperate that we look for help. And what happened is that 2 years after that, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And then they changed the diagnosis of depression to bipolar. And they did that because, you see, bipolar has depression in it, but it also has mania. And so after working with my team for a while, they started to discover that when I went into clinic, that was just the low part after a manic episode. And so that's where my journey of healing started, was the awareness. I didn't want to live life like that anymore, but I was also so familiar with being negative and sad, and the blackness was familiar to me. It was comforting almost, the despair. And so it took a further probably 2 years and another 2 visits into psychiatric hospitals before I made an actual decision that I didn't want to live like that anymore. And that was where change really started happening for me. So I got on medication, I was doing therapy and all of that, but inside me, I was still a victim in a sense. None of this, I've got no control over any of it. And it was only, like I say, about 2 years later that I was like, hang on a second, this is not living, this is not life. And no matter how comfortable it feels, I can't do this anymore. And so it reached that point, and I always say to my clients, you will only start to make change when the fear of the unknown is less than the despair of where you currently are. Because if that despair is still comfortable, or it's more comfortable than doing something that you're uncertain about, you're going to stay there. And so that is what happened with me. I moved from familiarity and comfortability of the depression and that way of thinking into, I can't live like this anymore, so I'm just going to do what they tell me. And I look back on it and I go, that is a gift of desperation. When you are so desperate that you are willing to do anything. And that's where the real journey started for me. Those first 2 years
I
was
think,
simply learning.
yeah. I think what I'm taking away from this introduction of yours is that you need to be aware that this is happening, and you
Mm.
need to be wanting to have a chance, a better chance in life. So
Yes.
basically, letting yourself be navigated through, the depression, the diagnosis that you're going through. So
Yeah.
wanting help is the
Yeah.
key there as well.
And
Yeah.
and there is no judgment when I say this, is that
Mm.
things are never going to change unless you want them to change bad enough. And
Yeah.
when I say, when you want them to change bad enough, the question I always ask is, what are you willing to give up? If I tell you that in order to move where you want to go, you've got to give up your family, your boyfriend, your job, whatever, are you willing to let that go? Because if you're
Mm.
not, then that is still
Sacrifice.
more important to you than
Mm.
getting better. And that's not to say you
Mm.
have to give those things up. It's more of a mental state, a mindset. And there's no
Mm.
judgment in that because, like I said, mine started in 2006, and it was only around about 2008 that I was willing to let go of everything and start making changes. So there's and this is just my experience, but there is a time between becoming aware that there is a problem or that you don't like how you're living and actually starting to make meaningful changes
Change.
in your life. And that's what happened for me. I was willing to let go of numerous things, my desire to work in a certain industry, giving up that freedom of studying and going and earning some money so that I could afford medical aid, so that I could get my medication, so that I could be stabilized. So there were a lot of things. It's not just giving up small things. Like I literally had to relook at my career path in that time and say, well, even though I don't want to go and do that job, that is going to give me financial stability, and I need financial stability to get mental stability right now. And so that was the start for me. And since then, it's been 15, 16 years of
Wow.
growth every year, learning new things every year. If I didn't do the work in the first, second, third, fourth year, I wouldn't have the
Be where you
ability
are
or
now.
the awareness to do the work that I needed to in year 6. It is progressive. It's accumulative. We talk about, what do they say? Compound interest is the most amazing
Yeah.
thing if you're earning the interest, and it's the most horrible thing if you're paying the interest. But
Exactly.
recovery is exactly the same. It works on a
Mm.
compound interest basis. And if you're putting the work in, you are reaping the interest in a compound kind of way. So every
Yeah.
year that you put that work in, the interest is
Mm.
getting larger and larger and larger.
Mm.
But if you don't put that work in, you are going to be paying more and more and more every year.
Yeah. So you said that you've put in hard work, um, like in the first 4 years or
Yep.
so, so that you can get where you are now.
Yeah.
My question now is, how did that affect your personal life? How did it
Yeah,
impact your daily
absolutely.
life and relationships as well?
Absolutely. One of the things that a lot of people, you know, I had to learn how to love myself. And a lot of people come in and they go like, well, I don't want to give up dating for a year or 2 years. I don't want to give up this or that. But sometimes, and this is why that kind of penny dropping of meaningful change will only happen when you are willing to sacrifice.
To
And
sacrifice.
and so it affected my personal life. I didn't date for many, many years. How could I accept someone's love for me? And remember, I was engaged just before all of this happened. And so
Mm.
I was bringing that kind of experience on. I was hugely loved by my fiance. I mean,
Mm.
he loved me beyond this world and what he was willing to do. But I never ever trusted or believed the level or the depth of his love, because I didn't believe that I was lovable at that depth.
Yeah.
And you can see how, if you are going out with someone or getting married, knowing that this is an issue, this is going to be an issue throughout your marriage, throughout your relationship, because the problem is not with the other person. The problem is with
It's
yourself.
you.
So that was one of the steps that I had to take. I didn't date, I didn't go out, I didn't flirt, I didn't have one night stands. I focused on my own recovery. And it's impacted me now, because now I'm 15 years, 17 years down from there, and I haven't dated ever since then, because it took me a long time to learn to love myself. And then I was like, well, I don't need, I've built up friendships that so much of this is provided for me. Yes, I do miss having someone that I can cuddle next to, that will do nothing with me. And
Yeah.
and so if that person had to come along now, I would jump at it. But I have learned to set such not protective, but like good boundaries in place. I'm not willing to change after all the hard work I've put into myself. I'm not willing to change now for someone else. And I would never expect anybody else to change for me. So, that was a huge thing I had to give up. I had to give up the possibility that I may never land up getting married and having kids. I'm a lot older now. I'm probably not going to have my own kids. But I have nephews now that I am in this beautiful, stable, serene, calm mental space, that I have the most beautiful time with them. My brother, my sister, they trust me with their kids. They trust me that I am responsible, that I am reliable and dependent. So when we talk about meaningful change, for me, I've always gone, if I put the hard work in, whatever the outcome, even though I don't know what it is, it will be better than what I have now. So that was one of the big things. The other was kind of pulling out of studying and going and working and starting to have to kind of make, well, how do I make financially responsible choices? So that was a big one. So at a very young age. Another one was with the addiction, stopping drinking. As a 25-year-old, it's a big thing. That's your party age, But for me, partying was less important than living a life that I enjoyed and that I felt good at.
Enjoy.
So there's been lots of impact and kind of thing. I think it was very difficult with my family, not because they didn't want to be supportive, but because there is so little. I mean, we're talking almost 20 years ago here. There's so little information. And I think when you don't know something, it can be quite scary. And then how do you support and help that person? Now that I understand more and there's more information in the world, like my mom and I talk a lot about my mood and personality disorder. She's even learned, she's like, Carrie, girl, you're sounding a bit manic. Like, she knows the cues better than I do in some of them, because as the information is out there, you can learn. And I think a lot of families want to support their loved ones, but it comes across as distancing themselves, rejecting them, or being critical, purely because there isn't information and people are scared. And I think it's very important, if you are someone struggling, to just question, is your family uneducated, or are they toxic? And that's quite an important thing to kind of figure out. So there were a lot of things, but most of all, I think the biggest impact was having to learn to accept that a personality disorder and a mood disorder, they do not go away. I had to learn to accept that I will forever have borderline personality disorder and bipolar mood disorder.
Sure.
And that sometimes, even if I'm doing everything right, I can still
Mm,
have an episode and land up in clinic. And to stop
mm,
fearing that and work with it and start saying, this is one of my tools to get better quickly when I have an episode. So that's been the biggest impact, is learning acceptance and then applying judgment within those areas.
wow, that's encouraging there. What you just related, and those that are connected on Telegram, we want to welcome you. And as usual, you're able to raise your hand and ask the question. And we do have those that are connected on YouTube as well. You can do the same by commenting on the chat box there, and then Kerry will be able to respond to your questions or comments. Now, back to you, Kerry. You spoke about your mom now having this knowledge on how she can identify if you do have a relapse, or you're threading on a
Yeah.
thin line.
Yeah.
um did you face any stigma when you were seeking help then, and how did you overcome it?
Sure. I think I am very blessed that I had a amazing professional team. Even though the very beginning it was a little bit difficult, I had a bit of an iffy psychiatrist, and I had to figure things out. The team that had worked with me at the psychiatric hospital were just amazing. And I
Mm,
could, whatever was happening, I could go back to them and say, where's my next step? This is not working out, and they actually ran the psychiatric hospital that I went to. They ran what they called an aftercare group every Wednesday afternoon. So after you had left the clinic, for as long as you wanted to, you could attend this Wednesday evening meeting. And that was so helpful, because every week I had a connection point with people where there was no stigma, there was no judgment.
mm,
It was a group of people that understood and experienced the same as me. I think the other blessing that I had is that I there may have been stigma around it. I just didn't take notice of it.
mm,
I did realize many years later that I've lost a lot of friends because they find me too difficult to deal with, especially when my borderline is quite active. But I feel like when I could start looking at things realistically, I can see the love from my parents through everything, even if it's not exactly what I needed at times. I cannot look at my life and my childhood and say I was not deeply loved by the people that surrounded me. Um, which I think is, when you're trying to heal and forgive and accept and all of those things, acknowledging that even though you may not get on with or like your parents, or they may not like you, or there may be disputes, if you can still acknowledge that you are deeply loved, even if you're all fighting, I think that gives a lot of strength
mm,
of being able to push through. And so, again, blessed that even though I had difficulties with my parents through all of this, their lack of understanding, my lack of ability to communicate, all of these things, I think even when I was like, my parents don't like me, or they don't want me, or I don't fit in, even when those thoughts were running through my head, there was
yeah.
always this message that, but they do love you. They do love you. Look at what they've done for you. Look at what they've given up for you. Look at what they've planned for you. So, yes, maybe you don't get on as people because you have different interests and those kind of things. But so I've been very blessed with kind of knowing that, and having the most amazing grandparents and aunts and uncles that really helped me get through a lot of difficult things. A lot of people don't have that. And when I first kind of went in, even though I knew I had my parents' love, I was very angry with them about a lot of things. And so I kind of, well, for most of my teenage life, I actually pushed them away from me completely. And I mean, I
Mm,
speak about this in my recovery kind of things, where I was like, I treated them like a hotel. I slept there and I ate there, and otherwise I didn't acknowledge them. And that was me pulling away with my own kind of issues, but also the messages that I had learned or picked up through things. I mean, no family is perfect. Everybody gets hurt by people. That's just a reality of life. And so taking all of that kind of stuff with me, I really pushed my family away. So the first couple of years of my healing, I didn't have that much support, communication, or kind of thing with my parents. As I
Mm.
learned more, as I was more educated within the mental health sphere, when I learned about what bipolar was, when I learned about what borderline was, when I started learning coping skills and tools, I started building the relationship with my parents up again. And the most amazing thing is that when you change, the world changes around you. We cannot expect other people to change. We have to put the change in, and then we will see change happening around us, like the butterfly effect. And that's when I really started, as I started being more open to my parents and saying, I'm struggling with this, or this is what bipolar is, and then also going, oh, my mom doesn't want to read a whole book on this. Let me see if I can find bullet points for her to make it easier for her to understand. Okay. That way we could start communicating, even though we have different love languages, communication styles, those kind of things. And so awareness, educating yourself, learning is very important. Just because you have a personality disorder or a mood disorder or addiction or whatever, I truly believe that it does not remove responsibility and ownership from yourself. And that for me has been the key to my healing journey, is when I started taking ownership for my healing and my recovery. And that's not, I didn't get it right all the time, but I started taking ownership. I stopped blaming other people. I stopped being a victim. I started being a student. As there's an artist called Ren, and he has this most amazing song called Hi Ren. And he says, in psychological warfare, there are no victims and winners. There are no winners and losers. There are only victims, and students. So there's no
Mm.
winners or losers. You're either going to be a victim or
Mm.
you're going to be a student, and you're going
Student.
to learn and grow from it. Um, and I think that's kind of how I've done it for all of these years. I've been numerous times back into clinic. I mean, let's be real. I've probably been more than 10 times into clinic in the last 17 years. But I've stopped going in for a crisis, and I've started going in for a reset before the crisis happens, which means that I'm there for a few days instead of 3 weeks and then a year of recovering from that
Mm.
episode.
Mm.
And that's the big difference, that awareness of these things is going to go out there. Mental wellness is not just being on medication. It's not just doing therapy. It's not just learning skills. Mental wellness is a combination of these three things, and then building a maintenance program that you live by. You cannot
Mm.
expect to stop your anxiety if you do not practice the tool that helps you stop your anxiety. It's like
Exactly.
jumping
If you
into
don't
a
change the
pool.
environment, yeah.
Well, it's like jumping into a pool with Olympic swimmers and expecting to win when all you can do is doggy paddle. You've got to put the training and the consistency and the repetition in
Yeah.
so that it
Yeah.
becomes a natural response. So when
Yeah.
I have anxiety now, without even thinking about it, I can go into deep breathing. I can go into a grounding kind of thing. So I can soothe myself almost immediately. And that panic
Mm.
attack never becomes, the anxiety doesn't become a
Overwhelming.
panic
Yeah.
attack so much anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great advice there. Let's change gears now. We're coming out from the journey that you've gone through in
Mm,
finding out the diagnosis, dealing with it, and then working along with it. Now
yeah.
you are doing something special now. You're running workshops and helping others cope with their diagnosis. Tell us what inspired you to create those workshops, and can you give an overview of what your workshops are entailing, and what are the participants expecting when they get there?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I realized on my journey is you go to a counselor or a therapist, you talk about stuff, you get some practical work that you have to
Mm,
take home and do. Okay, so the therapist says to you, okay, I want you to go home and I want you to list all the things that you can use to soothe yourself.
yeah.
And you get home, and one, you don't understand many of the concepts around mental wellness yet, or you
Mm,
don't even know what self-soothing is. And you can talk about it a little bit with your therapist, but I just found for me, I don't know if other people, but I would get home and I would have this homework that I needed to do for my therapist, which has always been helpful for me because it allows me to put action into the therapy that I'm doing. But I would really struggle and I'd go like, what does this mean? And and then you try something and it doesn't work because either the format that you've learned doesn't work for you, or you haven't understood it properly, or you haven't put the effort into doing it enough times for it to work. And so
yeah.
you give up on it. And so I started working for myself. I started going, well, how do I make learning these skills is difficult? Okay. And it takes time, which is frustrating. So how
Mm,
do I make this fun? How do I make it an activity? How do I make a game, in a sense, out
yeah.
of it? And so I started doing that for myself. I started creating. So like one of the things I saw somewhere and I was like, mental health bingo. Okay, great. So if I am having a week, I need to do these things for my mental health. But then I was like, oh, but I can use the same system to achieve my goals for the week, my
Mm,
self-care goals. So I can say, okay,
mhm,
I need to shower every day because sometimes that's very difficult for people that are struggling. Or I
mm,
need
mm,
to step outside the house, or I need to have contact with someone. So these are kind of my self-care goals. Well, let me put them in a bingo sheet, and I've got to say by the end of the month, I need a bingo blitz, where everything is crossed out on my 9 by 9 block. So now it becomes a game. I'm like, okay, can I get a bingo across in a week? Or you start doing things, I would draw lists or pictures of things, and then I'd go, okay, here's a trigger, and so I started building it into ways that made it easier. And very soon, as I was working with this and just sharing how it worked for me with people were saying, but can you show us how you do that? Can you give us a copy of your book? Can and I started realizing that, and I suppose this has always been there, but I have a unique gift. I mean, I'm sure there are other people in the world as well, but unique just in terms of I am able to see complex concepts or tasks, and I'm able to really put them into a very simple, understandable way. And then on top of that, I'm able to go, okay, explain to me why it's not working for you. And then I say, okay, so it's not the tool that's not working, it's how you're applying it. So stop
mm.
trying to hit the nail with the back part of the hammer that has the things to pull the nail out. That's why the hammer's not working for you.
The bigger,
And so
yeah.
I came up when I was retrenched 2 years ago. I kind of said, well, let me see if I can help people. I have a
Mm,
gift, I have a skill, I have a story. I have the education. I went and studied at the South African College of Applied Psychology. I got my counseling qualifications. I did all of that. So it wasn't just that, oh, I've been on this journey and now I'm out there trying to be a counselor. Like I did go and study it and all of those things. I just never
mm,
jumped with both feet into the kind
yeah.
of the area. I was always just 1 foot in and 1 foot out in a normal job. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so I started just building out and saying, well, what's the best way to make mental wellness accessible? And now accessible in all resources. So we're talking time, money, energy, brain, mental capacity, ability, all of those things. It's not just how do we make it affordable? How do we make wellness accessible? And that's where the
Accessible.
ideas of the workshops and the resources and the groups and the individual counseling all came from. And and I really started wanting to start building a brand around stop surviving and start thriving. And that's where
Mm.
my business started went for. So I like to say I guide, I teach, I share. So I share my story, I share the knowledge that I have with people. I guide people individually. I walk behind them. I support them. I hold them accountable. I get them to think through things and uniquely strategize wellness for their situation. And then I teach. And that's workshops, groups, talks, those kinds of things. So, whether you want to do something as an individual person, whether you want to do something in a group of people, whether you want to have me come to your company or your school, I've done all of these things. I've talked at schools about exam stress and how to help them. And then I sit and I don't just give them a talk. I go, okay, why do exams stress you out? Let's reframe that thought. Let's, okay, have you ever studied teaching your teddy bears? And then they're jumping like, that's such a cool idea. And so, but then I've gone into companies and worked with time management. So the idea behind it is not saying, oh, I work in this area or that area. What I really want to do is I want to come and go, where are you or your group or your people, where are you struggling to thrive? Why are you floating in the river instead of swimming? Okay, because a lot of people are surviving. They're not drowning. There's nothing overall wrong, but they're not thriving. They're not living the best life that they can. And that's
That they
what
want as well.
I want to help people do. So the workshops, there's workshops or process groups, and you can do it something as a workshop. You can join a process group. So like one of the groups I have is it's a 6-week group, but you can also do 3 half-day workshops if you wanted to do that with a group of people. But it covers life skills, how to find out what your values are, how to set goals and break them down, how to find out what your energy is. Are you a night owl or a morning lark? Are you a winter person or a summer person? Are you an introvert or you're an extrovert? How do I learn how to balance my spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical energy so that they don't steal from each other? How do we build, create, and work with habits to change them? So understanding what habits are, then looking at prioritization. We all know how to time management, but it feels like we don't because we don't know how to prioritize based on our values and the goals, and then actually, like, why are we procrastinating? It's not laziness. Let's dig into it. And then ending with kind of going, well, it's important to rest. If you're not resting, you're not learning properly. So that's like a 6-week group, or you can do them as workshops, and then I also run workshops that are about rest and rejuvenation. So I open up a whole bunch of creative activities, resting activities. And so it's very much about coming to me and saying, this is where we think the struggle is, or we don't even know, but there's a miscommunication somewhere. How can you
that was that was my next question there. Adaptability. So how do you adapt your workshop, to different audience, age groups, and cultural backgrounds, so that they come out there and then they're able to take
so
out the gems that they can use.
communicating is really quite a simple thing. The underlying information never changes. Okay. Mental wellness, what mental wellness is never going to change. It is always a holistic wellness of all aspects of your life.
Yeah.
What does change is how I communicate that information. So if I'm talking to a theoretical academic person, I'm going to use all the big words. I'm going to talk about the processes. But if I'm talking to a 10-year-old, so for instance, like if we talk about emotions, now I can, when I'm talking to you as an adult, I can say, you tell me that you're angry about something, and I'll be, well, are you angry or like what's going on? Look inside your body. Is your
mm.
heart rate fast? Are your fists clenched? Or are you more frustrated or irritated? What's the level? What's the
Or
intensity?
disappointed. Yeah.
Now, you and I can have that conversation because you have the
Mm,
mental capacity and understanding and
mm,
comprehension to have that conversation. I go teach a school, and I've done this. I've done. I break the kids up into grade 1 to kind of 4, and then 5, 6, and 7, like around that gap there. And then I'm not going to teach them about all the different things. I'm going to say, are you mad, bad, sad, or glad? Okay, what does that feel like? What if you're feeling mad? How does that feel in your body? And then instead of
mm.
telling them about all the wrong ways to express it, I kind of just say, well, what can we do? It's okay to feel what you're feeling, but how
Yeah.
you act is why some
It's
people
another
get
thing.
hurt. So it's not about the information itself doesn't change. The
Yeah. It's
examples
how
we
you
use
deliver
and the
it. Yeah.
way we communicate is what changes. And so I adapt according to that. I go in, I chat a bit, I find out, I'm not going to talk to 10-year-old boys the same way I'm going to talk to university girls.
Mm, mm.
I'm not going to talk to people that have never been in therapy before the same way I'm going to talk to someone who's been in therapy 20 years with me.
Yeah.
The level of the conversation differs. And for me, that is the
Your
adaptability
comprehension.
and the
Yeah.
flexibility. It's not
Awesome.
about the information. It's about how do I best get this information across so that the
Yeah.
person fully understands. And a lot of the time, it's not about the skills or the actions. A lot of the time, it's people don't understand the underlying concept. And so often I'll start there. And so I have a year course that happens, which deals with concepts of mindfulness, acceptance, growth mindset, building mastery, affirmation. So a lot of it is, I can't really expect you to start writing affirmations for yourself or displaying gratitude if you don't understand what the concept is.
Understand.
So that's the other side of adaptability, saying you're coming to me with this problem, but actually I want to look at what is the underlying bricks that are missing. Let's plug those holes and see if you can get it without me even having to explain it, because all you're doing is you're missing some information. Let's plug those holes. And so I love learning myself. So if I'm not sure about something, I will say, look, that's a new topic for me. Give me a week. And I will go and
And you
learn
can
and
come back.
speak to people and find out everything I need, because I want you to have access to being better, to thriving. And I'm going to do whatever I can to help you. And
Yeah.
that's the crux of my business.
Sure. Let's broaden this up a little bit. According to, or maybe in your opinion, what more can the society do to support mental health awareness and wellness?
So the biggest things that are happening at the moment is lack of education and lack of finance.
Mm,
Okay, so we cannot educate people because we don't have the resources to get the message out there. What society can do is work within your community and say, can we get someone in our community school, to come and talk to our kids, or in
yeah.
our community spiritual or religious kind of hubs, or the small businesses? Can we get together as a community, and can we start introducing awareness and education, so that when we have people come in with a mental illness of some kind, or even just struggling with anxiety, we've actually, one, got a support person that we can liaise with, and number two, we're starting to have skills and resources. And and then the other thing is, like you were telling me earlier, you're a videographer and a photographer. Like,
Yeah.
what if we could get, everybody has skills, okay? What if we could get people to just donate some of their skills? It doesn't have to be
Mm,
money. Like, if we've got a
mm.
videographer, can we create a 30-second awareness message?
Content. Yeah.
Content that can go on
Mm,
to YouTube channels, face, and we don't have to go big to the world. What can we do
Mm-mm.
here in our community in South Africa? You know, yes, we can put it on SABC, but we can also just have it on YouTube. So I can then take the link and go, hey, you want to learn something about this? Go watch this video. You know,
Yeah.
we can have, so I think that's where, how we as a community, because not everybody has finances, not everybody has
Mm.
time, not everybody has knowledge. So how do
Yeah.
we find what people do have and can offer and work as a community? So you may have kids that can run around to the houses and drop little informational brochures off. And it is such a real thing after the pandemic. Mental health, you know that it's difficult to even get in with a therapist or psychologist. Everyone is so busy because there is so much trauma. Can we as a community go, look, we want to run a support group for those that lost people, that are grieving? So we'll get a counselor in here, we'll all chip in 10 Rand and we'll pay them 200 Rand to come spend an hour with us. So it's a balance, because remember, your counselors and things need to make money to pay their bills. But if
Yeah.
they're getting consistent, most people in the business of helping within mental health, they're not out there to make millions and millions of rands. Most of us, we want to
They
pay
got
our
there with
bills
passion.
and help as
Mm.
many people as possible. So if
Yeah.
you had
Yeah.
to, like, I know, I would say, if you had to say to me, look, we've got about 30 people, they can each pay 10 Rand, can you come do a support group every hour for us? I'd be, of
Mm.
course. Of course.
Carrie,
So it's
we
working together.
yeah. You know, when you're talking about those professionals, um, on Telegram we do have one professional. I'm hoping she would have um would like to say something about that. She's also working with she studied psychology and all of that,
Mhm.
and she loves helping people. And I mean,
Yes.
with myself as well, I speak to her, you know, on a regular basis. So Stanley, if you are able to raise your hand there, if you have anything to comment, please jump in. We have few minutes before we end our show, and would really
Yeah.
love to hear your thoughts on this topic. While we're waiting for her to raise her hand there, or to make herself available, let's move on quickly.
Hmm.
What advice can you give to someone who's currently struggling with anxiety and depression?
Hmm. I
Would
would
you
say
would you
number
say to
one,
someone, yeah? Mhm.
sorry, finish the question.
So would you say someone who's hesitant to seeking help, this is what you need to do? How do you encourage those?
Yeah. So there are a number of free resources that are out there,
Mm,
support groups,
yeah.
online communities, apps and things that where you can be anonymous. What I
Mm,
would say is my starting advice would be way back where we started our conversation. If you've
yeah.
become aware that you are struggling, how much do you want to stop struggling? Because
Mm,
someone who is struggling but hesitant to seek help, they're not ready yet.
mm,
And I'm not saying that in any harsh, like, literally sometimes people, and I've seen this in a lot of people, they first get that awareness that something's not right. They're not happy, they're struggling, days are not good. But because the unknown of getting therapy or going to a workshop, that fear is still greater than the uncomfortableness of where they're sitting.
yeah.
That balance has to change. So
Has to
awareness is
change.
always the first step. Then you've got to start going, and I need to make meaningful change. So you've got to start challenging the comfortability of where you are. And that's when you can really, but I'd say if you're not quite ready, research. Research,
Yeah.
research, research.
Mm,
Go onto free apps, anonymous apps, but also go and research. Go research what a therapist or a coach or a counselor does. Find
mm,
workshops that are maybe more lifestyle orientated than mental health orientated. So, like the workshop I run, it's about life
mhm,
skills, it's not about a mental health skill
mm,
necessarily. So, find the gap in the thing. And I would say that's
Find
really where you can
what
start.
suits you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, there's Sister Tandy. You can unmute yourself, Sister Tandy.
Yes. Evening. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Can you? Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for this information. It's like we're reading a book, and thanks for enlightening us. Yes. Yeah. I didn't do psychology, but I did it as a module when I
Okay.
was studying nursing then.
Mm,
So I thought I will continue with psychology, but I didn't. I took other avenues. However, I am a
mm,
qualified health professional in the nursing field.
yeah.
What I like about your explanation, you discovered yourself, and I like your family because your family was just there for you, even if you were distancing yourself at some stage, but
Mm,
they understood. I think, if I understand well. And my head off to your mother as well, because you said there were times that your home was just a boarding house. You just went there to eat.
mm,
So you're trying to distance from your parents, and by discovering yourself, now the relationship between your nephews, your aunts, your parents are healthy. I think that's the way to go, because a person is not an island. Yes, we have issues, but to distance ourselves from a family, it's not quite healthy. That actually it causes more stress and anxiety. So
mm.
thank you very much for your input. I just listened carefully, and yes, I will continue reading about the topic. Yes, thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Sister Tandy, for that input of yours. Carrie, I've listened to you the whole time, and I could sense the conviction, the desire, um, you know, the need and the gratification that you get from helping people, and also
Mm,
trying yourself, not to have um the relapses, but if
mm.
you do already, you have steps that you're taking, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate that you expressed it in a way that it will also help us, when we're going through it. But now I want your final thoughts. Is
Mm.
there anything else you'd like to share with our audience about this mental health wellness, or even your workshops?
Yes, yeah. So, one step is better than no steps every time.
Mm,
Okay. One step is better than no steps every time. So, no matter where you are, if you can take the smallest forward movement from a millimeter to a mile, it is
mm,
better than not moving at all. And I think it is important to acknowledge that your best every day is going to change. And what I always love, my favorite quote in the world, this is a quote that I live by, that my life is run by, and it was given to me 15 years ago when I was in a psychiatric hospital, and my counselor gave it to me and said, you need to learn this. And I took it to heart. And that quote is, the greatest service you can render the world is your own self actualization. And what
mm,
she was saying to me, it took me a while to realize all of it. But what she was saying to me is that I have a huge amount of potential to make a difference in the world. And the only
mm,
way that I can do that and live up to that potential is to self actualize. So I had to work on myself. I had to become self aware. I had to make changes, and I had to grow and learn and never give up. And that is how I truly believe I have moved from someone who was in clinic every year, was struggling to just maintain any type of stability, to someone who is relatively stable, aware, and loves learning and teaching and sharing with people, and that has a story to tell other people. So the greatest service you can render the world is your own self-actualization. We all have potential in us. We've got to stop living to other people's values, other people's dreams, other people's goals. We've got to learn who we are. And that is when we stop feeling like we're failing at life and we start living to the potential that is within each of us. And so I would just like to say, go out there and self-actualize.
Yeah, set reachable goals for yourself, not goals that are put by others. Yeah. So where can people find more information about your workshops? How can they get
So,
involved if they want to?
yeah, everything is on my website, which is
Okay.
www.cjworks with an X
CJ works.
after the K. Okay, so it's workx.co.za,
Sorry, W O
cjworks.co.za,
R R K X. Okay.
.co.za.
.co.
And yeah, you can book a 15-minute chat with me, absolutely free of charge, and we can just chat and see where you're at, what you need. I'm always going to be honest. If you need to do a little bit of counseling and kind of trauma work first, I'm going to reach out to people that are good at doing that because I want you to be helped the most. I'm really here to kind of go, you ready to make changes? Okay,
Yeah.
let's start walking. Let's start making those changes. I'm going to walk with you, whether that's a workshop, an individual session, a group that you join, purchasing one of my resources. Everything is on my website. And if you have any questions or you want to know if there's something that's maybe not there, you can reach out to me, my email, my number, everything is on there. Or you can even come and join. I host a lot of sessions on October Health. And October Health is an absolutely free, anonymous app that you can download, no ads or anything in it, and just come and listen in the forest. I have a number of sessions that I host throughout the week. Come and learn, come be anonymous, and you can reach out there anonymously as well. So, yeah, get hold of me, my website, or on October Health, and that's everything. I always just love finding out, and I enjoy sharing things with people and seeing how I can help.
Yeah. We have a message there on screen. I wonder if you can see it. Let's see if I can get it.
I saw it briefly there.
You saw it briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It says, "Hi, Kerry." This is from Esther Kwele. Hi, Kerry. Thank you very much for sharing your story, sharing the knowledge, and giving us hope. What I take home is not about the information, but how we deliver the information. Wow.
Love
Thank you
that.
for that support. Yeah.
Thank you, Esther.
No, thank you so much, Kerry, for sharing all that with our listeners. As you can see, their comments there and their chats, they really appreciate it a lot. And I also want to thank Sister Tandy for also inputting there. We value your comments a lot on the show, as you have been with us for the longest of time. So, as we wrap up today's episode of NMP Talk Show, I want to take a moment to reflect on the invaluable insight shared by Kerry Hickman about mental health recovery and resilience. Kerry's journey reminds us that while the path to mental wellness can be challenging, it is also filled with opportunities of growth, self discovery, and healing. It is important to remember that dealing with mental health in your day to day in your day-to-day life involves patience, self-compassion, and the right support system. And here are the key takeaways that maybe you can have in mind. Acknowledge your feelings, seek support, practice self-care, stay connected, be kind to yourself, educate yourself. By integrating these practices into your daily lives, we can create a foundation of resilience and support that helps us navigate the ups and downs of mental health. Thank you for joining us today. Remember, you are not alone. in this journey. Together, we can build a community of understanding, compassion, and support. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of others. My name is Nmp, the host of NMP Talk Show, and this is how we signing out.